Oh my God! It did it! It's the figure skater went up in the air, did a double backflip, twist, half SoCal, then jumped up and did the triple landing like Rodney Dangerfield at the end of Back to the School, and then he went perfectly into the water. Vince Gilligan did it. I don't give a shit. This is the greatest ending of all time of any television show ever. It did it. My heart's still pumping. As I mentioned in the intro there, I need to listen to Michael Jackson Bad like 10 times to get the calming sounds of MJ to make my head get back on. Today, I was in kind of a malaise. It was one of those dark days that I just wasn't feeling it. I couldn't quite wake up. And then the episode started and it was like adrenaline got hooked up to an IV and filled my body with amazing rage and excitement. This was unbelievable. It wasn't as shocking and completely action-packed as Ozymandias, which probably is still the most episode. But this just gave me everything I wanted and nothing I expected in a lot of ways. How it all transitioned and came out wasn't like anything I possibly could expect. But first, before we go any further, before I have a conniption fit on the air right here and lose my shit and orgasm in my pants again, welcome to the Issues Program. This has been a real pleasure bringing this podcast to you every week, talking about episodes of Breaking Bad with myself and Gotti. And if you want to check out our stuff or hear any of the podcasts for the rest of the season, you can check it out at issuesprogram.com. Also, while you're listening to this, if you want, you can text. We did get some texts during the week, and we appreciate that. 781-990-8509, 781-990-8509. You can text or call that number and leave messages and anything you want. And go check out the YouTube page, Fill the Issues Guide. Check out all the videos of these as well and comment and subscribe away on that stuff. And you can also tweet me at I Got Issues Man. And if you're live right now on Skype, you can also call in at I Got Issues Man. So now that I got all of that out of the way, holy shit, the episode gave everything. Walt is dead, Jesse got away, and the Batmobile lost its wheel. I don't know.
It looks like the family got their money.
Yep, the family got their money. He covered the family.
Skylar isn't going to
Orange is the New Black. Yeah,
she's living in the house.
Skylar will not be on the next season of Orange is the New Black. That won't happen.
No. Everything that needed to happen for this to be perfect, from just just everything about the episode, even the characters who came late, like Lydia and the Nazi.
That sounds like a band name.
or a really weird Broadway show.
Yeah, off Broadway.
One of the things that the show was great at was making characters very quickly very important and getting you into them. And so we were invested to some extent in them, and they had become part of the narrative, and they had to be dealt with. And so they dealt with them
beautifully. And part of that is acting ability and casting choices and how Vince Gilligan directed this episode as well, with this episode wasn't as action-packed as I thought it was going to be, but it was funnier and had this interesting feel. Walt had a sense of life to him in this episode that you couldn't. What was interesting is all this talk this season about whether you would root for Walt or whether you couldn't root for Walt. This episode made it impossible not to root for him during this episode. You were just you just wanted to see him succeed in his goals, or at least I did.
I did.
Yeah, you did.
I've sort of said all along that I did, but I felt sort of justified in it when I was watching the show. This episode.
Because I know last week challenged that for you. The last couple of weeks challenged that perspective. And that we just got a text, and that's all he wrote, bitch. We didn't get it. We didn't get a last Jesse bitch. I thought there was going to be one last.
Yeah, that's right.
We did not get it.
We almost didn't need it. It would have almost been overkill, because that performance, his performance in this episode was, the whole thing is, like,
Emmy
there
Award
wasn't a lot
winning.
of action. It should just get an Emmy now. They should just go, look here. We engraved it already.
They should create an award show just for Breaking Bad, and then call it the
Yes.
Breaking Bads, and just give these people money and cheers and adulation, or whatever that word is I'm messing up on because I'm so excited right now. Accolades, yes.
But the thing was, it may not have had the action that you were expecting, that level, but it had a tension throughout it. It was incredibly tense because you didn't know when when Walt strolled into several rooms, you didn't know whether he was going to have a conversation or start, blowing the place up or what.
Absolutely. He had, and we'll get into this when we start talking about the episode, he had a very much a serial killer Skylar from Heroes vibe going on when he went into places to talk to people, just like sleeking in there like he just doesn't care. And I think this connects to the end of the last episode and why we heard the music again, because we mentioned this in passing, but the end of the last episode, when he watched that on television and Gretchen was talking about Walter White being no more, she didn't know about this Eisenberg, but Walter White is no more. Oh, I'm having some microphone issues for a second here. Make sure that's okay.
To hold.
Please continue to hold while technical difficulties occur.
Yes.
That is so we got that situation with Gretchen and Elliot basically saying Walt was done and there was no Walter White anymore. And we hear the Breaking Bad music to symbolize, in a sense, Walt has broken bad again. And at this point, he doesn't care. He wants to die. He doesn't have anything really to live for except a few things he needs to take care of. It's interesting that this was the motivation to get him to have the energy to get all of this done. It makes sense. But it was a very amazing plan, and that will lead us right into talking about the beginning of the episode, because when he saw Gretchen and Elliot, at least my initial thoughts were that he would be seeking revenge upon them, going after causing them some sort of harm. I think my words in the last show were, they will meet Eisenberg, and they did, but they met the manipulator Walt. They saw a confident Walt that they've never dealt with before. It was shocking in that scene, and let's just start right on. The last scene. I watched the last episode going into this, or I watched the previous episode, Granite State, going into this episode, and seeing that last scene again. It just made me think of no more Dana, only Zool. No more Walter White, only Eisenberg. It's over. In the last one, will they stick the ending? And it all starts out with the snow, like just a big whitewash of a window with all snow. And before we get going, we did have one caller that left a message for us, so we should play that because this was their thoughts before listening to the episode. We have a little bit of a before and after before we go any further here.
We're all over the place now.
Oh no!
This episode did you in?
Yeah, it did. I am completely trashed right now, and I haven't taken any drugs or drinking anything. I feel like I need a beer, and I'm not a big drinker. So here was a text message we had, or a voice message we had before the episode.
It's John Riley from J-Stone Studios and the Couchmasters. And my prediction for the final episode for the Breaking Bad series is the fact that you remember when Walt bought the submachine gun and he got everything together and he was on the East Coast. So now I guess he's traveling right now. And of course, throughout this, I think it was the first episode of the second part, you saw him back in his area saying hi to his neighbor and whatnot. But my prediction is that he's going to hit the Nazis.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to save Jesse, and Jesse's going to kill Walt. And Walt is going to let him. That's my prediction. I know it's crazy.
No, it's not that crazy.
Bear with me.
It's not that crazy, Riley.
Unfortunately, I can't watch it live because I don't have cable. But I will watch it tomorrow and see if my prediction is right. I hope you guys have a great show. And Phil, thank you very much for having a great show this season. And I look forward to watching you do many other podcasts for many other popular shows out there on the cable networks. Thank you.
And just for
JCR3.
JCR3, and just for a response, he somehow ended up watching the episode, and this was his response after the episode.
Oh, he did.
Worst
Oh, cool.
ending ever.
One more time.
Worst ending ever.
So before we get started, I thought that was actually relevant to hear someone's perspective going in before and after. So I think that very fairly kind of depicts what my thoughts going in the episode were. I did think Walt was going to kill the Nazis. I did not think some of the scenes that we had were going to happen. So here we go. The last cold open. It starts out all snow, all white. Walter's clearing off a car window. And at first, I didn't think much of this scene, but after seeing the whole episode, this was Walt cleaning off his shit and handling all of his business in a sense, like cleaning out seeing the way before the end of his life. I really liked the visuals. I loved the way this episode was shot. It was a credit to the series, the way the music and the way the visuals and the way the acting and the way the directing, everything came to play in this episode, and everything came together perfectly. It's not just because of the story. The story can be debated, and people can go on and on about what they wanted to happen at the end. That's part of what good art is, that you can debate it. But the quality of this, I can't think of another finale that matched it.
Let me put it this way. I'm colorblind, and I don't tend to pick up on a lot of things if they're small. But I picked up on a lot of what they were doing with the camera in this episode. And in order for that to happen, it has to be just very, very well done.
Yeah, and it was, especially in a couple of sections, symbolizing dream sequences or memories.
Mm-hmm.
So this is our last cold open, and Walt's cleaning out the car on the journey back to New Mexico. He's freezing, opens the glove box, finds a Marty Robbins tape, which is pretty funny. Gets a knife, can't really start the car. He doesn't know how to hotwire a car. Who's he kidding? I mean, he probably can figure it out eventually, but he's not in top form at this point. He hasn't quite got everything together that he gets by the end of the episode. He's trying to start the car. He sees cops' lights behind him as they're trailing him back from almost turning himself in the last episode. They found his hideaway. So there's no going back. At this point, you almost saw a look in his face where he could have considered going back at this point if he couldn't have found a way to start the car. And thinking about potentially getting caught here, but there's only one direction to go. He says, I ask for one thing, just get me home. Just get me home and I will do the rest. And this connects to something that Jesse said a couple episodes ago when he's yelling at Hank, I believe it is. He's luckier than you are. He just has that something special. And he does again. He willed it to happen. The cops went away and he finds the keys in the visor. Which was a little Back to the Future, him, Marty banging his head against the steering wheel and it's starting. But he found the keys in the visor, started the car, and he's off. Things are working out. And you hear the music and a great sound cue. Maybe tomorrow a bullet will find me, but today nothing is worse than the pain in my heart. Right away, before the episode even starts, Vince Gilligan or the sound designer, whoever decided to put this song and this moment in there, tells you what this whole episode is going to be. Maybe tomorrow, he does have a bullet in his heart, and today the pain in his heart. He needs to solve those issues with the pain in his heart. And none of this is about money. None of this is about getting that money back. I mean, there is part of it that's about money, and let's get to it. So we've seen all three stages at this point of him in this day. We see him starting the car and starting the journey. In past episodes, we've seen him in the diner getting the gun. We've seen him going to the house. So we're on the road to New Mexico with the Volvo pulling into a gas station. It's Walt. He opens the trunk, sees the bunch of cash, takes some meds, uses a payphone, which still amazes me that there's payphones, to call Sue.
There are 355,000 payphones in the United States.
Wow, awesome statistic. I like that. So he goes to call Susan, and he says it's David Lynch of the New York Times. I'm like, what is he doing here? Is he doing a confession or something? Like, I wasn't sure what was going on here. I'm calling you again. we'd like to do an interview. And again, right at this point, I'm like, is he pretending to interview himself? Does he want to tell his story? And I was like, this doesn't make sense. What's going on here? And he's trying to find the Schwartzes. He's pretending to be a New York Times writer. Excellent. He's doing prime Eisenberg, playing another shade with Walter White, playing a different character. Walter White playing this sort of like very friendly, hey, not like himself at all, and not like Eisenberg at all. And he's primed for revenge. And he, like I said in the last episode, these people will meet this Eisenberg. But in what way? So,
well, and yeah, we're convinced that, that certainly you and I were convinced that he was looking for them for revenge.
Yeah, me too. And at this point, I still at this point considered that he was going to.
Yeah, I did too.
Up until the last minute, I did. Because when we go to the Schwartz's house, we hear them talking Thai versus pizza. All this like stupid yuppie smug talk, playing classical music in the background while they're talking about math equations, playing.
Was it me, or did the door alarm actually turn on the music? Because I thought that was just terrible.
It was. It seemed like this scene was in the best possible way, like kind of comic booky, and
yes,
and the way Walt's kind of strolling in behind in the shadows, and just strolls in the front door, starts looking at the pictures while they're in the other room. It's a wonderfully visualized shot where the room's split into two, and you can see Gretchen and Elliot on one side of the room with Walter kind of slying around their room. And she discovers him, and he's just like, "Hello, Gretchen and Elliot. I really like your new house." He's almost like Todd, like a serial killer. I said like Skylar from Heroes, just very like. So hi guys, how are you doing?
Now, should I overlook the fact that Gretchen and Elliot's house only had security for when they're not there?
Yeah,
like,
that is a
people like them.
That is a good point, especially with this whole Eisenberg situation. You might figure. Yeah. I mean, I guess they think he's dead or completely out of the situation. So I would think
I just would think like with their money,
they would at least lock the door. They would at least lock the door behind them. It was a panic room. It was a little convenient. Yeah, it was very convenient. There was a couple of moments in this episode that were convenient situations. I've already mentioned one of them, the keys. The whole beginning part of this episode was very convenient, and the fact that Walter's just walking around, apparently one of America's most wanted men right now, just strolling around. He's got different glasses on, so he's got the Clark Kent Superman thing going on. He's like, I have different.
I figured it was the beard that did it. Nobody could find him because of the beard.
In the hair. Everyone thinks Walter, even the Nazis, when they see him, they're like, oh, you grew hair. Is that a wig? Thinking that he changed his appearance and his identity. So Walter continues with the fucking with them. Are we looking east? And he's showing off some of his mental stuff, kind of jumping in on what their conversation were about some of the 16th element of the negative power of thing is the quadrant of two. They're just showing them that he can keep up with their little stupid shit that they were talking about. And he's like, you guys were really, really fun on Charlie Rose. You looked great. You both looked great. I'm here to give you something. It's in my car. Let's take a walk. And then Elliot pulls out a little like butter knife or like a little tiny knife used to cut limes when you're for drinks at the bar or something.
Lamest thing. He's like, it's clear that Gretchen is the one behind that business.
Oh yeah, because Elliot can't complete a coherent sentence, just like I could right there. Elliot's like, apparently Elliot watched the episode, so he can't function either. And he's just like, and then he just looks to her. He can't even answer a yes or no question. And this happens in the scene after the commercial, but you want us to do what with your, what do you want us to, and then she just cuts him off. What do you want us to do with your drug money, Walt? It's like,
interesting parallel here. To the scene where Todd killed Andrea, because it's sort of. I was thinking of I was wondering if that was sort of foreshadowing that they were going to go out and,
And Walt was going to shoot them, or Walt was going to
the way, yeah,
do something.
do something like, it made me think of it, but I was wrong.
So me too. I was wrong about a few things in the scene. So then,
but that was good. That was one of those things that they did on this show, like the fake outs that work so cool. You go, we saw a scene like this last week. No,
it's going to happen again. And the other thing that they do great is just throw in humor. And Walt's response to him pulling out the knife, he goes, "Elliot, if it's going to go this way, you're going to need a bigger knife." And he drops it. For whatever reason, it made me think of Crocodile Dundee, but in the best possible way. That's not a knife.
It was a combination of that and Jaws, was what I was thinking.
Yeah, we're going to need a bigger boat. So after Elliot drops the knife, we go to commercial break, and we come back to Walt with all the money, Walt's car parked in front of the house, and all the money piling onto the table, and Walt's kind of be careful with my money. I don't want any of it to fall under the furniture. And he said, "I have about $9 million in change. 10 months, 2 days Junior will be 18. You'll give this money to Junior in a cash and a trust." And this is the scene I was talking about a second ago, where Elliot's like, well, "Come on, Walt. Why would we?" And Gretchen's just like, "Psst, why would we give your kids drug money?" And Walt's just having a fun time lording over these people, kind of messing with them, and he manipulates them. He's like, "Call it what you want. You guys just gave money to an anti-meth foundation. Just give money; it will make sense." And he's just trying to guilt them kind of into it about, "You owe this to me somewhere along the line. You screwed me over. I saw you on Charlie Rose. You know I had more to do with your company. You guys owe this to me." And it's really, I think, more about that he looks at these people as the only chance he has for his family to get any money, and added benefit of it.
And money that will, boom, it's clean.
It's clean.
Because
it could
nobody's going to ask where they got $9 million.
Exactly. And it can and if Junior needs any explanation, they can say, "Oh, it's what your dad earned from gray matter. They offered him that money at one point in time anyway." And I know it's none of their money, but if they want to lie to Junior, just lie to Junior about it. So he doesn't have to think about it. But yeah, they are the perfect people. And you see that what Walt was feeling in the bar when he saw them on Charlie Rose was rage in a sense, but it was also when you're that much of an evil genius, so to speak,
rage comes with opportunity.
Exactly, and you look for any of those opportunities. He had the reason why he was ready to turn himself in is he had no little ropes to pull. He had no strings. He had no possibility. And they gave him his possibility because they were something he didn't think about, and then it just all occurred to him in a nanosecond that he could use them and manipulate them into giving Junior the money. And knowing how much Elliot's a coward, and he's looking at them. His guilt. He thinks his guilt worked. He's like, "I can trust you to do this." Yes, and I'm like, no way he can. Elliot, the way Elliot's talking, he's like, Elliot's gonna call the cops right after he leaves there.
Of course you can.
Yeah, of course you can.
Well, but the thing also that he managed to reduce Gretchen, who is a rather formidable person, into Lydia. I looked, at 1 second, I looked and I'm like, she's Lydia right this second.
Yeah, she was helpless. She was just like,
She really was. And it was it's sort of frightening to watch it, but also incredible to see that he could still do that to somebody.
Yeah, and
he was such a powerful person.
And that had so much control over him that both these people were people who he kissed their ass for probably most of the time when he was around them or walked on eggshells. And Walt was really having fun. If Walt knew this was the last day of his life, which he did, he was having as much fun as possible on this day. And right at that point, as he's about to walk out, he gives them a look, and of course, he covered his ass, and he says, I hired, and you see two rifle laser shots go on both of them when he makes a motion towards the window. He says he hired 2 hitmen, and if any reason his kids don't get this money, a countdown will begin, and you will die. Talking about
that was brilliant.
Talking about stock prices in the world, with no worry in the world, and then suddenly you'll hear scrape right behind you, and boom. Having fun, and then nothing, darkness. And he said, "Have fun, kids. Cheer up, beautiful people. This is where you get to make it right." And I'm like,
I assume that was from a song,
probably, or some sort of reference that they understand. And I was thinking at that moment that he was pure evil. I guess the biggest shock that I had in the entire episode was what was about to happen now, and another minor thing that I have a little issue with, but whatever. But I like the fact that they fit a way to put these guys in the episode. So it wasn't even Hitman; it was Skinny Pete and Badger.
I love that. I was waiting to say it, and I didn't want to say it too soon, so I decided to say it.
Sorry, thanks for letting me say it, though.
I had $200,000 more of this money, but I gave it to the most highly trained sniper.
And he's talking about Skinny Pete and Badger. Oh my God! It was hilarious. And they're like, the whole thing felt kind of shady morality wise. And Walt hands him probably like $5,000. He's like, that would feel better.
Yeah, it sure does.
Yeah, it does.
A little.
And it was freaking hilarious that he picked these 2 guys. And then he's like, what is this I hear about the blue meth still being sold? And they're like, yes, it is. By who? Well, we thought it was you. Aren't you still cooking? And we were sure it was you. It's better than ever. And then the whole scene shifted to Jesse. He's like, Jesse. And Walt says, like, all angrily, and they're like, yeah, Pinkman should have get me a job, man, with, passing the torch, dude. Excuse me. So my one issue with this section was, how does Walt have Skinny Pete and Badger's number? He doesn't even know their names. In 2 episodes he called them, like, Beaver and Fidget or whatever. He's like, what are their names and stuff? But I guess he probably could somehow find them on the street corner.
Probably. He could have had their numbers.
He seems like the type of person that probably never forgets numbers, and he knew their numbers at a time, considering he has a lot of burner phones. It's probably like the past, and maybe somewhere in his mind he had one of their phone numbers memorized. It's not that far of a leap. It's just something I thought about at the time, like how do you know how to get contact with them easily? But maybe it wasn't easy. Maybe it was just he pulled up to a street corner. They're obviously victims of habits.
Did they go to the high school, and did he know them?
Possibly. I didn't think about that. They might know him. I think they just know him through Jesse, but it is possible that
I don't know.
It's not that important. Yeah, it's not that important. It was worth it. It was worth it to get a Skinny Pete and Badger.
It was worth the scene.
Yeah. And someone texted me during the show that Skinny Pete was going to use the money for that to become Fat Pete. Okay, yeah, that was great, pretty funny.
It made me laugh.
No, I like that. We also had one person for predictions say that they thought that Walt was going to turn into a ghost and we were going to get Shadow Walt. So I also appreciate that text message. And we did have a message from last week that someone texted us over last week that said, how about the show's theme being played in the last scene tonight? Gave me goosebumps. And we talked about that earlier with about symbolizing that Walt broke bad again. Dun dun dun. So back to our episode. We're this is the scene that probably was very, very well shot. It was shot in almost a sepia tone. And we get the woodworking from the Vince clue. And it's Jesse.
Yeah.
Perhaps a premonition of the future. After seeing the entire episode, perhaps this is Jesse's future. shaved, looking pretty happy, working in a wood shop, being all technically handy and seemingly having a good time, and with strange, hopeful music.
In a very tranquil life, not surrounded by any kind of violence or, doing something that but exactly parallel to cooking meth, in that he came to love cooking meth because he was so good at it.
Exactly. And it seemed like, from what you could see in the woodworking scene, that he was good at woodworking, too, in that scene. Like, he found something else that he was really good at, and he could work with his hands because it's something he always wanted to do. So we see that it was all a fantasy, and he's looking like a caveman, like hooked up like a dog, like it's still making meth. And we go to the cold open, to the diner.
Hooked up like Mr. Hart in 9 to 5.
Exactly. And then we go to the cold open and the diner from 5-1 and 5-8. And we see him get the rice in Walt in his house. A bit more of that, where he gets a flashback of Hank talking about doing that drive-by with him. Another fantasy. That
was very nice.
It was, and it was a parallel.
It centered the episode.
It did.
Very well.
And especially coming right off the scene before, where we got to see a fantasy of Jesse's, you realize that Jesse is the only person that deserves to survive in this, because he could have a future. Walt's life was in his past. Jesse did have Jane, and he had, I'm blanking on her name, the woman that died last week, Andrea. But none of those were really completely healthy relationships. Maybe Andrea towards the end of it, but Jesse wasn't all there. But he has a chance for a future. By the end of this episode, Walt gives him that chance. Or he gives himself that chance. But we'll get to that. So we go to Walt in his house a bit more. He has the fantasy about Hank. And then we go to Lydia, getting her chamomile tea again. Someone on another podcast I was listening to, someone pointed out the chamomile tea a few weeks ago, and then I just started noticing it, how much she talks about the chamomile tea and the stevia that she puts in there.
Yeah.
Always with the stevia. It made me think, did stevia get product placement in this episode, because you actually get to see a stevia pack.
Well, that's actually the name of the plant from South America.
Interesting. So
yeah.
So Lydia gets her chamomile tea again. Todd comes in there, and Walt's in the background. And another comical scene, because Walt's just kind of hanging out around. It's like, oh, there's wanted man Walter White with cancer walking around the room, and for like 2 minutes, and he's getting around well for America's Most Wanted. At 10 a.m. and he sits down, and Lydia's like, oh, how do you know I'm here? And she's like, he is like 10 a.m. every Tuesday morning. You're a victim of. You do the same thing every week. And he has a little bit of a cough fit. He just says sorry in a very funny voice. And he said he knows a way to make meth with no methylamine. That he calculated that they must be running out of methylamine, and he wants to help them. Would actually, you can tell in that situation. At least I wrote right there. He just ricened her. You know that it happened. The way they focus.
Well, because there was the visual effect.
Yeah, the visual effect. They focused on. They made sure you knew.
I don't know how they did it. It was cool.
Yeah, to the way when it hit the liquid and to see the reaction in the liquid, you knew what had happened.
Slowly and then it sort of sped up or something. I don't know, but it was cool to watch.
And he said, of course, and Todd's like, we can't do business with him. Come on there, pretty Lydia lady. We can't do business with this Walter White. He's really, really dangerous. And she's like, of course we're not doing business with him. We have 92% or 96% with this Jesse Pinkman. The Captain Cisco will never get us. The power race. No, sorry. So we're doing business. Jesus, did he look bad? He looked awful. Do we need to spell this out to you? Todd, we need to kill him. And as we mentioned before, she stares the ricin into her coffee, and she's really underestimating Walt, and so is Todd at this point in time. He knows how smart Walt is, and he's more thinking about it from the end that he really. Someone else on a different podcast about Breaking Bad said this, and I agree. Todd has this vibe about him that he thinks that any second now, they're all going to forgive each other, and they're going to go out for ice cream and talk about the train heist again. Oh, hey, Jesse Pinkman and Mr. White, how you doing? Let's get some ice cream and talk about our days stealing that methylamine. That sure was fun. Even right to the very end with Todd, you get the vibe that, like he thinks that everything's going to be okay with him and Mr. White. He feels really bad. He really likes him. And they're really underestimating Walt in this moment. And I wrote it. I'm rooting for Walt. Ha 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 ha. My heart rate is up. I was tired all night and day, and now I feel like I'm on speed. To a window in the desert that could have been a painting with the gun and Walt planting his bloodbath, using all he has left, using all his technical skills, somehow hooked up with did some MacGyver work where he hooked up his the car lock system to start the gun and add a rotating machine gun for the M60, and hooked it up to the car thing. And he calls, and at this point it's a kind of a weird cut. It cuts right over to Skylar in a dark room smoking a cigarette, and Marie calls her in the answer machine. She's like, let's set a truce. I really hated Marie in this scene. I mean, that was played well, but she just has that vibe.
I never liked Marie, and
she just has a real douchebag vibe in this scene. Like, you could just tell, like, she calls Skylar weekly and leaves her these horrible messages about how Hank was the better man, and both our husbands are gone, but Hank will always be the better man, and da-da-da-da-da-da. You know, just all that sort of stuff. You get the vibe. She's like, I have news for you about Walt. He's in town. And poor Becky saw him outside her house. Your neighbor, Becky. No, Carol. Well, Becky, Carol. Well, he called her by name. He said, hey, Becky, or hey, Carol. It was a funny name. Whatever. She said he looked like the Unabomber, and he's in town blowing up City Hall. People are calling in to the police and saying that they're Eisenberg, and it's just people fucking with it, calling in bomb threats and stuff. And Marie's like, they're watching you. Make sure you know that feds are going to probably be watching you. That's what Hank would do. Yeah, that's what Hank would do. Look out. And Walt thinks he's some sort of criminal mastermind, but he's not. He's not. There's only 3 places he would go to go see Flynn, you, or me. And I'm like, yeah, Marie. Yeah, he'd really go see you. Why would he go to see you, Marie? Yeah, he's coming after you. I'm sure that's high on Walt's hit list. Ooh, what am I going to do today?
It didn't make a lot of sense. She, of course, what she was doing was, she's tearing him down because she needed to. I mean, he won and killed Hank, and that,
and got away. So, and plus, because of the place that she's in right now, she probably has a sense of importance and thinking the whole world, everything's about her. And it is fair, because when she came back to her house was trashed, where the Nazis broke in to get the Jesse Pinkman videotape. So she is spooked a little bit. Anyways. Mm-hmm. We transition from that scene to see that Walt's actually standing in the kitchen talking to Skylar, and I get the vibe that he was there when she called, but that wasn't. It wasn't completely clear.
Given the camera angles that they used, there's every reason to think that he was standing right there.
And it explains more the looks on her face and her body language at that moment. So I kind of wish we got a shot of her working at the taxi place, Dispatch Taxi. I think that would have been hilarious, seeing Anna Gunn, seeing Skylar dispatching taxis, but maybe in some outtakes. So she's like, Walt, you have 5 minutes, and kind of a funny moment between the two of them. Just, you didn't kill anybody or hurt anyone to get in here, did you? And he's like, nope, didn't have to. You look terrible. And he's like, yeah, but I feel really good. And she's just smoking, so she's like, so talk. Why are you here? It's over. And he's like, it's over. I need a proper goodbye. And she's like, so you're going to the police? And he's like, no, they'll be coming to me. And then she tells him about the Nazis coming to her. 3 men came to me and threatened the kids. And Walt's like, they won't be coming back after tonight. And then and she's like, I didn't want your money. Didn't Flynn made it very clear, and he's like, I don't have that money. I spent the last of it getting here, and he pulls out of his pocket. She thought he was going for money. He pulls out of his pocket the lottery ticket with the GPS coordinates for Hank and Gomez's grave, and he told her the truth about what happened to them, about the Nazis killing them and stealing his money. Mm-hmm. And he tells her to use the information, use where the bodies are to get a deal. Tell them I broke in here, I roughed you up, or whatever you need to tell them. Whatever. And he goes to tell her, he goes to tell Marge's sister, because she's sitting there smoking a cigarette, like Salma. She goes to tell Salma that I did it for my, and you think he's going to say the whole I did it for my family thing again. She cuts him off. She's like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear that again. And he's like, no, I did it for me. I did it for me. I liked it. I was good at it, and I felt really alive. And honestly, that was the first time in the entire series of Breaking Bad that Walter White was truly honest. It was frightening, and
it was.
And he's tell them I forced my way in, and he goes, before I go, may I see her? And he goes and sees the baby. And Skylar can just feel the connection between Walter and his daughter, and she gives a little bit of a smile because it happens later with Jesse too. In some ways, all people wanted, these people that really love Walter or wanted to love Walter in his life, Jesse at one point really wanted to be Walter's friend and like wanted Walter as a father figure, and Walter in his way thought of him as a son, but he needed to get to this point to be able to cut through all bullshit. And some may say before he broke bad when he was no, because before then he cowered out of his birthright, or not his birthright, his intense mental ability that he had and the place he had in the company in gray matter, that because he couldn't truly be himself, he couldn't use that control. The Eisenberg used it for good rather than evil. And then he fell into a marriage with a woman that was very controlling of him. Skylar, before the whole switch, was an extremely controlling woman and just kind of never let Walter be who he truly was. And as a teacher, he wasn't really being himself either. As much as he enjoys showing people what to do, he's a scientist, not a teacher. He gets frustrated by the teaching. As is established kind of in the first episode.
He was hiding his inner badass all those years.
All those years. Or being frustrated that he wasn't a hugely rich mogul in some part.
Right.
So we go to commercial and we get back, it's all Bob Newhart's dream. No, we get back and it's a...
No, Tommy Westfall shakes the snow globe.
We just suddenly fade to black. That's what happens here. So we
best onion rings in the city.
Yeah, it all happens. It all happens at once. Sam leaves the bar, and that is the end of the series. And we pack the war ends, and the MASH crew return home. We see Walt's car lights behind a fence, and a couple of really amazing camera angles in the scene, and beautifully shot. And we get a visual of Walt arriving at the Nazi place, and you see switch cars again. In the second Nazi in charge gets probably the most lines he's gotten in the whole his whole little run here, and he kind of is chit chatting with Walter about, oh, do you have the 500 series or the 440 car? Blah blah blah. Oh, this is the 500 series. And Walt kind of is sizing up the situation. He's like, where's the clubhouse? And we're at the Nazi compound. That's where the meeting will be. And he tells Walt to park somewhere, and Walt doesn't park there. He parks in a very certain spot, which, I mean, there's no... At the very beginning of this scene, there was no, how's he going to do this situation? You knew he was parking the car in that certain spot to get a good shot on them, and you knew he was going to use the keys to fire. It was just a matter of wondering when he was going to do it and how he was going to get together. But then it gets a little bit interesting in the sense that they frisk him and they look for guns on him, and they don't let him keep his keys or his wallet. They take them both. And 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 he's like, "Where's my keys in the wall?" And they're like, "You'll get it back eventually." And he walks in and he faces off with Uncle Jack again. And Uncle Jack's like, "Look at him." And that's where we get the scene. "Oh, is that a wig? You look good with hair." "What are you doing with hair?" "Well, other than that, you look like shit. That's really nice hair." And he basically tells Walter he's not interested in his plan, that if they want to keep the thing going, they'll get some methylamine from Lydia just in a smaller level. They don't need to cook that much. I mean, hell, they got millions. And they probably made even millions of more on that methylamine that they just went through. And Walt's like, come on, Todd. And you can tell that Walt has a plan here. It makes me wonder if they had said yes, if how the plan would have changed, but it's interesting how it all manifested. And Walt, because he doesn't have his keys, I think he expected to have his keys in this moment, so he's kind of having to think in his feet a little bit. And he's like, "Todd, come on, Todd, you know what, we should do this." And he's looking at Todd, considering that, because he knows that Todd has a soft spot for him. And Todd just turns to him, "You really just should not have come back, Mr. White." And Jack takes the guns out, and they pull him on him, and they're like, "Take him out back and kill him." And he goes, "You owe me. You owe me. You partnered with Pinkman. He's alive."
Let me make another why Walt White is the greatest character ever on television. He had the presence of mind and the nerve when all of the Nazis were standing around him with their guns, about to drag him, out back to shoot him, to come up with a way to get Jack to stop.
Yeah, and know what a trigger, understand Jack, and understand that Jack, using the weakness that Jack showed in the sense of giving Walt that money. So understanding that Jack does have some sense of that quote-unquote code of the street type thing, and that would be very offended by the fact of working with Jesse Pinkman and the way that Jesse, what came with that inclination that he would be working with a rat. And he's like, "You owed me. You partnered with Pinkman. He's alive and working with you." And he's like, "Yeah, he's not my partner. You think I'd partner with a rat?" And he's like, "You call me a liar? Get Pinkman and show him how wrong he is, and then I'm going to put a bullet in your head myself." A little bit of a convenience, but this was awesome drama, so I forgive it. That he just doesn't that he doesn't kill Walt on the spot for calling him a liar. Instead, he wants to prove to him before he kills him. Whatever, it works. I accept it.
"Well, Mr. Bond, I'm going to tie you to my saw machine, and it will slowly..."
It was a little bit of a Batman, I'm going to put you in this wonderfully elaborate machine instead of shooting you right here. Little bit of Adventures of Ford failing. Man to man, mano y mano. What the fuck's mano y mano mean anyway? And he just shoots Robert Englund. It's a little bit of that, but whatever. I accept it because it was awesome. It's not...
I didn't have any choice because I was too glued to the television.
Yes, I was enjoying it too much to give a shit. I don't care if it's a little bit of a convenience. It was beautiful. And Jassy wanders on down the Pinkman row. Jesse waddles out, and they're like, "Get Pinkman. He's just finishing a cook. I'm going to show you how wrong you are and put a bullet in your head." Jesse comes in. Walt leans back as Jesse's coming in and tries to grab the keys. Jack's pissed and kind of pacing around. No one's looking at Walt. Again, they're underestimating him. They're just thinking of him as like a dead man walking, cancer patient. Walt's coughing all over the place, whatever. And Walt gets the keys. Yes. you know this is going down now. Walt has the keys. And then Jesse comes in. He's like, "This is what I'm talking about, you son of a bitch. He's my slave. He doesn't look like a partner. Does this look like 50-50? And then Jack's just doing his thing. Great casting on Jack. This guy is hilarious playing this character.
Yeah.
A very likable Nazi. I'd have him for dinner. So
I have prepared food. Chilean sea bass. My grandmother's recipe. And you come to my home.
So then, at this point in time, Walt charges Jesse and tackles him down, and he pushes the button of the car alarm when he has Jesse down on the floor, and you see that he's doing this to save Jesse. And I kind of skipped over as Jesse comes in looking like a slave. Him and Walt share eye contact and share a moment of not a help me, but there isn't the hatred looking back and forth. Jesse, all the shit Jesse's been through, he has bigger fish to fry in this situation. When it comes down to it, everything Walt did, he might have used Jesse, but he didn't do anything like cold-bloodedly killing Andrew in front of him. Something like that. Letting Jane die in an overdose is pretty horrible, but poisoning Brock, but knowing he'd survive is horrible. But it's not like what Todd did to Jesse and turning him into a slave and forcing him to cook. I mean, it's like if you have a small cut and then you in your hand and it really hurts and then you break your leg. You're going to be your leg's going to be painful.
There's a difference between doing something awful to someone and dehumanizing them, which is a whole nother level of, it's not to suggest that Walt deserves a medal, but there are levels of what you can do to somebody, and
exactly, and then there's what Todd and the Nazis have been doing to Jesse, completely dehumanization of them. Worse than being in a maximum security prison locked inside a box 24/7. It's horrible. But worse than the Netflix show I just watched, Worst Russian Prisons. Yeah, check it out. So
God.
Yeah, it was awful. So Walt,
I can only imagine.
So Walt tackles Jesse and pushes the button, and the machine gun fires off. Oh, so many rounds. Right. You see that the car was parked right in the proper area, where, again, it's a little bit of a convenience that Walt happened to know exactly, but he did ask where the meeting was, and that's the clubhouse, so he did kind of know, and he had been there a few times, so it does make sense. Walter does have a very strong memory and is very good at planning and plotting, so it is safe to assume that he would be able to figure this all out. He had been at the compound a couple times, I believe, at this point. So in that melee, you do see clearly that Walter did get shot, and while he's basically protecting Jesse, putting himself out there, you also see that Todd's also down on the ground, and he didn't die either, and Uncle Jack is still a bit alive as well. And Todd, this is what I was talking about with Todd about that he thinks that all this happened now, him and Walter are going to be all good buddies, and he looks out the window like he's proud of Mr. White for doing this, like oh my God,
now it's just us.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we can go do another train robbery. Look at this Mr. White. He is a genius. They'll never catch him. How do we not think about this? And he's like, and all that gets out is wow. He goes, geez, Mr. White, look at your car, or something like that, and Jesse just pounces on him from behind, and super rewarding, and just chokes him out, and it's just hilarious. It's not hilarious, but it's just amazingly rewarding.
It's so nice to see.
Oh, it is.
It's just like, finally, not something good happens to Jesse, but finally, Jesse, I don't know, maybe, something good happens to Jesse. He gets to be the one who chokes Todd to death.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
it was a beautiful...
It was satisfying.
It was satisfying. It was
a very satisfying moment.
And it was one of Jesse's, probably one of the happiest moments in Jesse's life. Considering how horrible the last time Jesse had to kill someone with Gale was for him, I think this will make him feel a lot better about that in the future. No, I don't think so. But I think this was a good last thing that he needed to do that might help propel him in the right direction, especially considering what happens after that between him and Walter. I think he got out everything he needed to get out in that moment. And he chokes him out. Walter picks up the gun and walks over to Uncle Jack. And Jack takes one more hit of his cigarette, one more drag of his cigarette. He's like, "You want your money, don't you? If you want your money, you need me alive." And Walt doesn't even hesitate. He doesn't give a shit.
I loved that moment. It is one of my favorite moments ever in any television show or movie, because they always get him, and it's such predictable bullshit. And Walt was, you know, and of course it didn't save Hank's life. You know, I've got money didn't save Hank's life.
And that's I was just going to say that we always talk about parallels on the show, and that was the parallel exactly to, he got the same treatment Hank did, essentially. Nothing, no talk, and I think that death would, not that I wanted to see Hank suffer or die in the sense, but Hank's death was satisfying for a viewer in the way that it happened in the storyline. It was horrible and shocking. I mean, you knew it was going to happen, but it was so well done. And I think this killing was very similar in that, except it was something you were just cheering for. You just felt for Walter in that moment, and you loved that he was doing that and getting to do that. And I agree. And there was a couple moments in a couple different shows, and I wrote this in something where I knew if I was watching a different show, certain things would happen or certain things would be true. It would have been, he would have killed Elliot and Gretchen, and it wouldn't have been as good. If he would have done, it would have been too comical, or it would have been too American Horror Story, or too Dexter or something. It just wouldn't have.
You know, I was watching another podcast, and they were talking about when Skylar grabbed the knife and Walt was, you know, had been attacking him, and she cut his hand, and he stopped, and how, you know, if you was 24 and you were Jack Bauer, you know, you get shot in the leg, and I think he said, like, you know, you're flying a plane 20 minutes later.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, whereas in Walt's case, you know, he got his hand cut, which is a pretty serious injury for anybody, and he had the reaction that most people would have, which is, oh my God, my hand.
Exactly.
So,
Ending ever.
Thank you, John C. Reilly. Yes, it was again. So after this point, he shoots Jack dead in the head, and
bye, Jack.
Bye, Jack. Bye, Jack. And Jesse and Walt stand up face to face. Walt puts the gun down on the ground, slides it over to Jesse to give him the gun. He points it at Walter. He says, "Do it. Do it. You want this." Then, similar to the Skylar scene, Jesse says back to him, "Say the words, or nothing will happen till I hear you say it." And a callback also to their last moderately positive scene in the desert with Saul. And Walt gives same answer, basically like he gives Scott, "I want this." And Jesse looks and he sees Walt's already shot and he's losing blood. And Jesse, again, this is where Jesse makes a good decision, and I think he exercised his demons in some ways. He feels like, I'm sure at some point in his mind, and you get this in the moment when he drives off to go be in the Need for Speed movie. I think it's interesting that he drives off in the car screaming when the next thing he's going to be in is going to be the Need for Speed movie where he's driving cars. So it was just an interesting way of going out.
Well, they had good ad placement tonight. Let's just say that.
They did. They definitely did.
All night.
All night. In more commercials, too. They were making their money tonight. And he says, no, if you want to do it yourself. And you just get the feeling like Walt's losing a lot of blood. He doesn't have much longer anyways. He's going to die within the next 10, 15 minutes anyway. He's going to bleed out. And we see Walt and Jesse. Jesse won't give him the satisfaction of shooting him, and he doesn't want to kill anymore. He got that all out with Todd. Todd was his revenge. Todd got out any hatred he had right there. And you hear probably, again, the most hilarious part of the episode right here that the show manages to stick this in right too. Todd has a Lydia ring that actually says the name's Lydia. La 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 Lydia. Like at first I was like, what is that? What's going on right now? and you see that's Todd's ringtone. That's like la 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 Lydia, 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 Lydia.
Yeah, it was some like old song I was guessing, or that he made an MP3 of, but oh my God.
And she's calling him, and Walt answers, and she's like, "Is it done?" And he says, "Yep, it's done, and they're all gone. And she's like, wait a minute. She doesn't recognize the voice, or she does recognize the voice, and she's like, who's this? Who is this? And he's like, how are you feeling? You've got the flu? And he's like, I slipped it into your tea. I know, into your what is stuff called again? Extevia,
whatever it is.
And he just goes, goodbye, Lydia. And you could see that Jesse can see that what just happened, or he heard the conversation, and they look back at each other, and Jesse gives him a smile, which is part a smile like, wow, you did get him in the end. You know, you won. He almost right there how the audience feels about Walter there. Not that he's a good person, but wow, you're a bastard to the end. A little smile at him.
Yep.
And a thanks for saving him. And in a sense that you really did care about me in your own fucked up way. And you admitted the truth to me in the end, that you wanted it for you. And he cries, and you see Jesse crying tears of what seemed to be almost happiness. There seems to be a lot of happiness in these tears. And as I wrote, off to the Need for Speed movie. And he leaves Walt alone, bleeding to death. And Walt walks into the lab. And I'm cheering for what everybody in the world is cheering for at this point, for him to start cooking. And he picks up the lab, and he's just looking at the lab equipment, and you know everybody in the audience is just screaming, are you going to cook? Are you going to cook? We see the police sirens coming, and I think he would have started to cook. I really believe that's what he was starting to do. And he goes to put the mask on, you hear the crystal blue music, and he falls down and bleeds out and basically dies. Yeah. And the camera fades up, the scroll up as the cops all roll in, and Walter White is dead. The end. And you hear the music. I guess I got what I deserved. Bam! Best ending ever. And that was our believable. And that is our Breaking Bad, folks.
And the thing is that they had us so, I don't know if it counts as it's like one of their fake outs, but like, you knew he got shot, right? Mm-hmm. Because it was obvious. And then we saw how bad, that it seemed pretty bad, or there seemed to be a lot of blood, but we still didn't think, you still thought maybe it's not so, it's like Homer when Lisa pushed the roast pig down the hill. It's not so bad. It's not so bad.
And that's why I thought he was going to cook at the end, because you always thought he was going to let them catch him.
He was just like, it's just maybe one, he'll be fine for one last cook. He's not going to die.
But the true legacy that comes from that episode and from that end is what Skinny Pete and Badger were talking about in the car to him at the beginning, is that because of where he gets caught, fallen dead there, the legacy of Eisenberg is going to be that he cooked to the end, that he was the person supplying the method for this whole section, that Jesse was slave Jesse.
Oh, yeah. And
I think that was part of him going in there because he lost his family, but he did take care of them in the end. He figured out through the gray matter situation how to take care of his family, how to get Skylar off, but he also wanted to protect his legacy, and he was proud that Jesse held it on, and by dying in that room, it makes him seem like he died in the lab. And he had the helmet with him, so right until the end, Walter was protecting his legacy. And you see it in that scene. We didn't mention it as much, but in the gray matter scene when he's arguing with Elliot.
I totally didn't catch that. And it was really obvious. I mean, yeah. I mean, I said something about it last week, I think, but he really... about a scenario in which he might make it happen, but it wasn't this one. But yeah, basically Heisenberg... Oh, I said if he were to die in the cabin and nobody ever found him, Heisenberg would essentially die a legend.
And even more so, he's going to die a legend.
Even more so if he dies cooking.
Yeah, and which it looks like he died. Jesse had just finished a cook. Then they mentioned that early in the episode before they bring Pinkman in, they're like, "Oh, Pinkman just finished a cook," so it looked like he just finished a cook, and then the Nazis killed him or something, or then he died in a big firefight or something like that.
Right. Whatever happened there with that. I mean, well, they'll see the car with the gun-a-majig in it, and they'll be like, okay, whoever did this, Heisenberg got cut up in it.
Okay, so now that we're done with the episode, a couple of final thoughts before we wrap up here. The first final thought is about a specific character. Since our characters that are surviving left, what do we think happens? What do we think happens? Because Walt's story is finished, but there's obviously a few loose ends. Do Gretchen and Elliot fall through on what Walt put them up against? Will they fall for this and do that?
Yes, because Walt is dead, and I know that doesn't necessarily sound like it makes sense. Walt is dead, so they I think, will look upon the family and just feel sympathetic and do what, because remember, she was friends with Gretchen too, Skylar.
Absolutely,
and,
yeah, and
they were, and they can say, "Look, we found this. It was Walt's. Whatever. We're going to put it for some reason into a trust for just Junior, but whatever."
Yeah, Junior and Holly, I guess I guess you're assuming that Junior will give Holly some of the money,
right?
But we'll see. We'll see how. I mean, we won't see, but I tend to agree with you. I think Gretchen always, even to the point of seeing this Eisenberg, believes that Walt deserves more from the gray matter situation. And I forgot also to mention, we might have mentioned at the beginning, Walter, makes it a big point to say to them, any costs, I don't want you guys to use 1 penny of your money with this. Don't pay, if there's any taxes, take it out of this money. I don't want a cent of your money. I get a feeling, and we mentioned this earlier, Gretchen is the driver in this relationship, and I think she feels in some way that she owes something to Walt, and I think she will definitely make sure Junior gets that money. I don't think they will go to the police.
Well, yeah, and what's Elliot going to say? No?
And I agree with you.
That doesn't seem likely.
A lot of that does have to do with once it comes out in the newspaper that Walter's dead. They won't...
Yeah.
Because it fits right into what he was telling them to. And I do think that the crack killer thing, the hitman behind them, will always be in their mind a little bit too. Because Walter did such a great job of manipulating them.
With Skinny Pete and Badger.
What do we think? What do we think happens to Skinny Pete and Badger? I think that Skinny Pete and Badger... with no more blue meth and no more Jesse Pinkman, will Skinny Pete and Badger just fade into nothingness? I think so.
Madrigal will reopen Pollos Hermanos, and they'll get jobs there.
I think that's our best answer for them. So yes. on to some of the more important ones. Walt Jr., will he manage a Denny's one day so he can have breakfast 24/7? I think
I don't know where it was, but you can probably Google it. Somebody went and collected everything he's ever had for breakfast.
But you got to think that with his money, that's something Walt Jr. might want to do, or will he buy?
He could. He could just buy a house and have servants, and they would make breakfast every day.
Or he could become a NASCAR driver. He could get into expensive cars, get into car shows and things like that. So,
yeah.
So
yeah, although that could happen to some extent, but that's what I actually think is that he could be at risk of $9 million isn't that much money if you don't know what you're doing with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, especially
it could be a lifetime's worth of money, but it could also be
especially Junior's not. Junior's old enough to be a lot fucked up because of what happened in that situation. Unlike Holly, who has a better chance of being more well-adjusted. So on to Holly. She'll have no negative effects in this situation and be a very happy child growing up. Skylar?
Yeah, unless she has, people giving her a hard time because of who her father was, but that
I have a feeling Skylar will move the family. Skylar will move to California, move to San Francisco, and work as a bookkeeper somewhere. We'll get that
car washer.
Yeah, we'll get her life back together. Marie will go.
But I also think that Walt Jr.'s best chance is if Skylar becomes, her controlling self and says, no, here's exactly what you're going to do with this money. This is how you're going to invest it. This is how you're going to use it so that you have this over time.
You got to think that Skylar is going to become super overprotective and super controlling of her kids at this point, especially considering that her and Marie's relationship will probably be over, which leads us to Marie, who I do think will get back to her kleptomaniac ways and probably end up in jail for some period of time without Hank to bail her out. She will get some closure because of finding the bodies and being able to lay Hank to rest and all that stuff.
Yeah, which, whatever you might say, she deserves that. I think ultimately Marie will marry another DEA agent or something.
Yeah, because she'll be in those circles, and she'll get close to somebody dealing with the grief. And yeah, I tend to agree with you in that she'll get married very soon. She won't be single long.
Mm-hmm. No.
Unlike Skylar, which
she's,
I doubt will meet somebody else anytime soon.
No, unless she meets somebody who she could wind up marrying Elliot.
It wouldn't surprise me.
When Gretchen and Elliot get divorced over Gretchen being too controlling about the trust fund thing, Elliot will marry Skylar.
And on to obviously our most important one, Jesse. What's going to happen with Jesse?
It upset me that we didn't find out.
That leads me to the woodworking. Is the woodworking a flash forward, or is that a hope? Was it a dream? But is that are we to believe that's Jesse's future?
I hope so. I have to think that was more than one kind of escape for him. Mm-hmm. He lost too much and too many people. And I think that was the Sugar Hill Gang.
Where does he go from here? Where does Jesse go? Alaska? Does he go to Alaska?
I don't know. He doesn't. Does he have his money? I don't know. Does he have?
I don't think he has. I don't think
he has his money.
I don't think he has anything.
No. So he didn't hire a vacuum cleaner guy.
He can't even get gas for the car. What happens when he runs out of gas? Oh yeah, vacuum.
You know what?
Robert Forrester. That seemed to be people were yelling at me. I forgot to mention that people were yelling at me a little bit from last week that I was calling him Nathan Petrelli, or no, I was saying he was Nathan Petrelli's father. I just couldn't think of his name. But yes, Robert Forrester was the gentleman.
Robert Forrester.
Robert Forrester.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
See, it's
but yeah,
it's the audience that we love.
He doesn't have any money. He runs out of gas. He's screwed. Unless he stole some money from the scene. He knew where the Nazis were keeping some of the loot, but no, he doesn't have any money.
He didn't. There was certainly no thought in his mind, just because of the way things went. He didn't know that anything was going to happen, so he didn't steal meth that he could sell.
Andrea's dead. He can't go to Andrea. He's not going to his family. He's not going to his family.
Yeah, Jane's father probably doesn't want to see him too much.
No. Q definitely doesn't want to see him. Q will send him off to the continuum. He'll make him. Him pay. That's his best bet. He could become Q.
Aaron
Paul would make an excellent Q. Blink, bitch.
His his family, they're just sitting there watching the television going, oh my God. I don't know, but he does know a lot of shady people.
Yeah, that's true.
Oddly, even though he's trying to escape that, he could get the fact that he knows these shady people could help him.
He could cook.
You get
He could
only
collect.
so involved.
Yeah, he could collect a couple things on the street and cook a little bit of meth or something like that, make some money, and get out of town easily.
Yeah, although it's Jesse, so in other words, what we've just said is that Jesse is damned to an eternal life of this, repeated in several situations.
Exactly. Jesse's moving to California or Vegas to start cooking meth again.
No, I think he's getting out of it. I think he's going to show up somewhere and get one of those. I said I wasn't going to say a lot on this week's show. And
it happens. I say and stuff a lot. I go, yeah, and stuff. It happens. We can't help it because we get excited about this,
Yes. I think Jesse will go to some place that doesn't look like they're going to ask a lot of questions and find himself a job washing dishes and start from there. And if stumble on the guy who makes the wooden boxes and apprentice with him, or take an adult ed course or whatever he wants to do, and switch to that and sell those and make a nice little living on eBay or Etsy and stay out of trouble and just build the kind of a calm, decent life that he never had and never imagined.
I tend to agree. I think he's gonna.
All happened.
I think he's probably gonna go somewhere, sell the car, get a little bit of cash, and then find a place to start over. Agree with you. Get like some crappy small job out in Wisconsin or some part of Arizona or New Mexico. And because he's not really on the cops' radar at this point. Once they get Eisenberg, everything's going to be closed up. I mean, Jesse has sort of a free run right now and can really make a life. He just needs to start from scratch. But he can use his name. He doesn't have to have a different identity now. No one's out to get him. All these Nazis are gone. He's free to go. I mean, Marie knows his name, but who gives a crap about her? She's not doing anything. She's not going to be like, I got to get every single person. Marie
is going to want to get as far away from this as she can.
And for everything she knows, the last time she saw Jesse, he was on Hank's side, and she doesn't give a crap at this point. Especially once Walt's dead, they're all going to have closure with that situation and want to get as far away from it as possible, as you said.
They could keep the case open looking for Jesse, but he's kind of.
So yeah,
I don't know. It just doesn't seem.
So I'm going to say that the reason why we saw that dream sequence for Jesse was is the truth. That's a flash forward in a sense, and that is going to be Jesse's future. I think that's the point of putting that moment in there. That was some premonition of what his future could be like, and I'm going to hope the best and hope that is his future in some ways.
Yeah, I think it will be. I think.
And last but not least, we talked about this a little bit before. 2 questions here that we're going to end on. We're right here, right now, the way we're feeling. Where does this put Breaking Bad as a whole for a television series, for dramatic series? Near the top, on the top, or towards the bottom of the top? Because I think at minimum it's towards the bottom of the top. And this
put it between Supertrain and
and chocolate ice cream.
Perry Mason. Honestly, I never like to be like it was the greatest ever. But it's if you have to name the top 5, it has to be in that list.
Yeah, it has to be. Right, we don't have to say what our top list is.
If you say it's number 1, you're not wrong.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect way. I think I'll piggyback what you just said there. If someone claims that Breaking Bad is the best series of all time, There's no arguing with that. I mean, there's arguing with that, but you're not completely wrong. It's in the argument.
Right.
But let's get to where I don't think it's an argument. Series finales, final seasons even. I don't think anything has ended quite this strong, with the exception, for my taste, for maybe...
Can we call, with the exception...
For my case, the way... I was going to say, show my geek and say the way Star Trek Deep Space Nine ended with the big, long 7 season...
Well, I was going to say, for a lot of people, that, yeah...
Or some people could claim that the argument against what we're about to say would be another thing, would be All Good Things was a very good series finale. Cheers was another one that was a very good series finale. Lost was an amazing... Oh, whoops. No, I'm kidding about that. No. People didn't like the Lost finale? Wait. People didn't like the Sopranos finale? But there's a lot of series that had very good finales. I think I can almost easily say that. You want to say it? You can say this one.
Well, here's what I will say for the finale. Mm-hmm. Nobody has ever done in a finale what they did tonight. Somebody might someday, but this is better than anyone I've ever seen, and probably anyone that's ever been done. I would feel perfectly.
And this last season, to talk about a show that was so great, this is the...
Can we split 5A and 5B?
Yeah, I'm talking about 5B.
And say that
5B is the greatest season.
5B was, 5B had, 5A was good, and it had its moments. 5B, unparalleled as a whole season, don't you think?
Yeah, unbelievable, and peaked with episodes like Confessions, and Ozymandias, and this
Ozymandias was
unbelievable.
Yeah,
still the
I saw part of it.
Yeah, still I could. It's hard for me to say which one I enjoyed better, this or Ozymandias. I think for shock value, obviously Ozymandias wins, but this was just such a great close. It's so hard to stick the ending, and I know it's the big buzz expression these past couple of weeks. Stick the ending. But
I had to look that up actually.
But I
had no idea what it meant.
But it's so hard to do that on a TV show, and especially one with an ending this hyped up. And Breaking Bad frickin' delivered, man. It delivered. I don't think we can say much more. I'm gonna read a couple of tweets and comments here. Oh yeah, please.
Can I read a post from Danielle Madruga's post on Facebook?
Please do. That's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna read it.
WTF. That's how it ends. Breaking my heart. Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
She didn't like it.
Aw, we have someone that said 100% satisfied with the ending of Breaking Bad. I can't believe it's over after 6 amazing years of TV. What an incredible show. Goodbye forever, Breaking Bad. I've never been obsessed with a story like this in my entire life. Thank you for the experience. While I'm already starting to go through Breaking Bad withdrawals, what a fantastic ending. It will be profoundly missed. And one more. Just finished watching the season finale to Breaking Bad. I love it so much. I'm watching it again right afterwards. I might do that when I get off the podcast, folks. I might have to watch this episode again, or I'm at least gonna watch the Talking Bad and see about this.
Gonna watch that.
And one more, and that's the end of the greatest show in television history. Period. Incredible. Period. And I guess that's all we can say. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been really fun bringing you these podcasts this year and talking about Breaking Bad after every episode. We'd like to thank you for all the listens and likes and comments that you've been doing. Again, if you want to check out
thank you so much.
Any of our episodes, you can check it out at Phil the Issues Guy YouTube page or issuesprogram.com to check out more of my videos and podcasts and other articles and such. And you can also call in or text in 781-990-8509. And yeah, again, thank you very much. And Gotti, you and I are going to talk later about doing something else, some other analyzation type thing. It's going to be tough to do something after Breaking Bad, so we're going to take a little bit of a break on this, but
break to find something worthwhile.
Yeah, so we might do some older type things, like pick maybe watch the couple episodes of Star Trek Next Generation or other type things, just to kind of bridge the gap while we figure out if a new show that we both agree on to do. So stay tuned for that. I'd like to thank everyone again for listening, and have a good evening, and stay safe, everybody out there. Beware for evil Walter Whites wandering into your house like evil serial killers. Have a good night, everybody. Later.